I always thought people exaggerated when they said money changes people. It doesn't. Money simply removes the mask. I learned that on an ordinary Tuesday morning. The winning numbers had been announced the night before, but I was too exhausted after a 12-hour warehouse shift to check my ticket. I tossed it onto the kitchen counter, made instant noodles, watched half an episode of a sitcom, and fell asleep on the couch with the TV still on. The next morning, I almost threw the ticket in the trash. Something made me stop. I opened the lottery app while waiting for my coffee to brew. The first number matched, then the second, then the third. I smiled. 3 numbers usually meant enough money for dinner. The fourth matched. My smile disappeared. The fifth matched. I felt my heartbeat in my ears. There is no way. I checked the numbers again, then again. Then I refreshed the page, convinced the app had glitched. The final number appeared. It matched. Every single number. For almost a full minute, I couldn't move. I wasn't excited. I wasn't celebrating. My brain simply refused to accept what my eyes were seeing. I drove straight to the nearest lottery claims office. The woman behind the counter scanned my ticket. Instead of smiling, she looked at the screen, then at me. "Sir, could you come with me?" My stomach dropped. Inside a private office, another employee and a manager walked in. The manager extended his hand. "Congratulations. You've just won $187 million before taxes." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because nothing else made sense. Yesterday, I had spent 20 minutes deciding whether I could afford to replace the worn tires on my old car. Today, I had more money than I could spend in several lifetimes. Before I left, the manager gave me one piece of advice. Tell as few people as possible. He explained that many winners didn't lose their money because of bad investments. They lost it because they trusted the wrong people. I promised I would keep quiet. And I genuinely meant it. But there was one person I couldn't hide it from. My older sister, Emma. When our parents ignored me, Emma was there. When I got kicked out at 19 after arguing with Dad, she secretly brought me groceries every week. When I lost my first apartment, she let me sleep on her couch. She never asked for anything in return. If there was one person I trusted with my life, it was her. That evening, I invited her over. She noticed I was nervous immediately. "What's going on?" Instead of answering, I slid the lottery ticket across the table. "Before you look at it, I need your word. No matter what happens, you don't tell anyone." She laughed. "You're scaring me." "I'm serious." She picked up the ticket, compared the numbers on her phone, then checked them again. Her eyes filled with tears. "Oh my God, you actually won." She hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe. "I promise," she whispered. "No one will ever hear about this from me." I believed her. The next morning, my phone rang. Dad. We hadn't spoken in 7 years. I ignored it. 30 seconds later, he called again. Then Mom. Then Jason, my younger brother. Then 3 cousins. Then an uncle I hadn't seen since I was 15. Within an hour, I had over 100 missed calls. I called Emma immediately. She answered, crying. "I'm so sorry." I only told Mom. "She promised she wouldn't tell anyone." I closed my eyes. That was all I needed to hear. By noon, strangers were congratulating me online. Old classmates sent messages asking if we could catch up. Relatives I barely remembered suddenly called me family. Then Jason texted me. "Don't make us come over. We need to discuss what's fair." I ignored him. At 6 that evening, I heard engines outside. One car, then another, then another. I looked through the window. My parents, Jason, 2 aunts, an uncle, 3 cousins. Nobody had been invited. They walked toward my front door like they owned the place. I should have pretended not to be home. Instead, I unlocked the door. That decision would become the biggest mistake of my life. I stepped aside without saying a word. One after another, they walked into my house. My father looked around the living room as if he were inspecting a property he planned to buy. My mother smiled politely, but it didn't reach her eyes. Jason headed straight for the kitchen and opened my refrigerator without asking. "So," he said, grabbing a bottle of water, "this place is nice." I closed the front door. "No one asked why I invited you?" Jason smirked. "You didn't?" "Exactly." Nobody laughed. My Aunt Linda broke the silence. "We're family. Family doesn't need invitations." I wanted to believe she meant that, but I already knew she didn't. For years, family had needed invitations. When I worked weekends and holidays, nobody called. When my transmission failed and I walked to work for almost 3 months, nobody offered me a ride. When I spent Christmas alone eating frozen pizza, nobody noticed I wasn't there. Now everyone suddenly remembered where I lived. My father finally spoke. "We're happy for you." It sounded rehearsed. "So happy," my mother added. Jason nodded. "You deserve this." Those were words I had waited years to hear, but somehow they felt completely empty. Dad placed a leather folder on my coffee table. "We've been talking." I looked at the folder. "About what?" "Your future." I frowned. "My future?" "Our future," Jason corrected. He opened the folder and spread several printed pages across the table. At first, I thought they were financial plans. Then I started reading. A new house for my parents, $5 million for Jason to launch a real estate company, a vacation property for my aunt and uncle because they had always dreamed of retiring near the ocean, college funds for cousins who had barely spoken to me. Another page listed luxury cars. Another listed business investments. At the bottom was a grand total, $42 million. I blinked twice. Surely I had misunderstood. "What is this?" Dad answered calmly. "A fair distribution." I looked around the room. No one seemed embarrassed. No one looked uncomfortable. They had all expected this moment. Jason leaned forward. "You'll still have over $100 million left." "As if that's supposed to make me feel better." He shrugged. "It should." I slowly put the papers back on the table. "Who came up with this?" "We all did," my mother replied proudly. "It took us almost 3 hours." 3 hours. They had spent more time planning how to divide my winnings than they had spent talking to me over the last 7 years. I couldn't believe it. Dad folded his hands. "We're not asking. We're telling you what the right thing to do is." I stared at him. "The right thing?" He nodded. "Family takes care of family." I couldn't stop myself from laughing. Not because anything was funny, because the hypocrisy was unbelievable. "When I was 19, I said quietly, "where was this speech about family?" Nobody answered. "When I got kicked out of the house with 2 trash bags full of clothes." Silence. "When I couldn't afford rent." Silence again. "When I called asking for help after my surgery." My mother looked away. Dad cleared his throat. "That was different." "No." I shook my head. "It was exactly the same." Jason rolled his eyes. "You're living in the past." "No," I replied. "I'm remembering it." The room became tense. I picked up the entire stack of papers. For a moment, everyone smiled. They thought I was finally going to sign. Instead, I folded every page in half, then again, and dropped the entire stack into the fireplace. Orange flames swallowed the first sheet within seconds. Jason jumped to his feet. "What are you doing?" I watched the papers curl into black ash. I'm making my answer perfectly clear. The silence that followed was unlike anything I had ever experienced. Then my father's face turned bright red. He pointed directly at me. "If you walk away from your family today, don't expect us to forgive you." I looked him straight in the eyes. "I think you already decided that before you knocked on my door." No one spoke. The fire crackled behind me as the last corner of the agreement turned to ash. Jason was the first to break the silence. "You've lost your mind." "No," I replied. "I've finally opened my eyes." He took a step toward me. "You think you're better than us because you got lucky?" "I never said that." "You didn't have to." My father stood up so quickly that the coffee table shook. "I worked 30 years to provide for this family, and I respect that," I answered. "But this ticket wasn't bought with your money. It wasn't bought with Mom's money. It wasn't bought with Jason's money. I worked for every dollar that paid for it." My mother suddenly began to cry. Real tears rolled down her face. "I can't believe we're arguing over money." I looked at her in disbelief. "We're arguing because you came here with a bill." She wiped her eyes. "We just wanted everyone to have a better life." "So did I. But none of you asked what I wanted." Jason laughed. "What you wanted? You won $187 million. You don't need all that." I stared at him. "And who decides how much I need?" He didn't answer. Instead, my aunt spoke. "You've changed." I slowly shook my head. "I haven't changed. You just never noticed who I was because I had nothing you wanted." Those words hit the room like a hammer. Nobody argued. Nobody denied it. My father picked up his car keys. "Let's go." Jason didn't move. He kept staring at me. "This isn't over." "It doesn't have to continue." "It does." He pointed toward the window. "Do you really think people won't find out?" I frowned. "What does that mean?" He smiled. "You'll see." That smile bothered me more than anything he'd said all evening. One by one, they walked toward the front door. My mother stopped beside me. "You still have time to do the right thing." I quietly opened the door. "I already am." She lowered her head and walked outside. The driveway slowly emptied. The sound of engines faded into the distance. For the first time all day, the house was silent. I locked every door, closed every curtain, turned off the lights. Then I sat alone in the living room, staring at the dying fire. Maybe they just needed time. Maybe tomorrow everyone would calm down. Maybe we'd talk like adults. I wanted to believe that. At 6:17 the next morning, my phone vibrated. Then again, and again. Dozens of notifications poured in every minute. Messages from strangers, friend requests, missed calls from numbers I didn't recognize. I opened one notification. It linked to a local news article. Local man wins $187 million, refuses to help his own family. My full name was in the headline. There was a recent photo of me, and underneath, someone had shared the address of my house. My heart started pounding. I looked outside. A news van had just parked across the street. Another one pulled in behind it. Then I heard the first knock at my front door. It wasn't my family. It was a reporter. And I realized my nightmare had only just begun. The knocking didn't stop. Another reporter joined the first, then another. Within 15 minutes, 3 news vans and 2 photographers were parked outside my house. Someone even started live streaming from the sidewalk. I stepped away from the window and pulled every curtain shut. My phone rang again. This time it was an unknown number. I answered without thinking. "Is this Daniel Brooks?" a woman asked. "Who's calling?" "I'm with Channel 8 News. We'd love to hear your side of the story." I have no comment. Before she could say another word, I ended the call. My phone rang again. Another reporter, then another. I finally switched it off. A loud knock echoed through the house. "Mr. Brooks? We know you're inside." I ignored them. An hour later, I slipped out through the back door, climbed into my car, and drove to the nearest hotel almost 2 hours away. Only after locking the hotel room door did I finally breathe. The first call I made was to the Lottery Commission. They immediately referred me to an attorney who specialized in protecting lottery winners. His office was in the city. We met that same afternoon. His name was David Carter. He listened without interrupting while I explained everything, from the phone calls to my family showing up with their ridiculous agreement. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "I've represented 8 lottery winners. Every single one believed their family would be different. They never were." He slid a yellow legal pad toward me. "Starting today, keep everything. Texts, emails, voicemails, letters. If someone threatens you, save it. If someone lies about you, save it. If someone asks for money, save it. Don't argue. Don't defend yourself. Let them talk." I nodded. "What if they sue me?" He smiled. "They can sue. Winning and suing are 2 different things." For the first time since all of this began, I felt slightly calmer. That feeling lasted less than 24 hours. The next morning, my bank called. "Mr. Brooks," the manager said, "we stopped a suspicious request involving your accounts." "What kind of request?" "Someone called pretending to be you." I froze. "They knew your full name, your birthday, your previous address. They even knew which branch you normally visit. But they failed our security verification." "Did they identify themselves?" "No." The call ended, but my hands wouldn't stop shaking. Only a handful of people knew all of that information. My family. I immediately called David. His expression didn't change after hearing the story. "They're getting desperate." "Can we prove it was them?" "Not yet." But desperation makes people careless. That evening, another message arrived from Jason. "You could end all of this today. Just send the money." I didn't reply. 5 minutes later, another message appeared. "You'll regret making Dad look weak." Then another. "This isn't over." I took screenshots of every message and forwarded them to David. His reply came almost instantly. "Perfect. Don't respond." The following morning, I received a notification from my home security system. Movement detected. I opened the camera feed. Jason was standing on my front porch. Beside him stood my parents, and next to them was a man in a dark suit carrying a leather briefcase. David happened to be sitting across from me when I opened the video. He watched silently for a few seconds. Then he said something that made my stomach sink. "I recognize him. That's Richard Hale, one of the most aggressive civil attorneys in the state." I looked back at the screen. Jason smiled directly into my security camera. Then he held up a thick envelope. It wasn't a request. It wasn't an apology. It was legal paperwork. My family hadn't come to make peace. They had come to take me to court. I stared at the notification for several seconds before opening the front door remotely through the intercom. "I'm not home," I said through the speaker. Richard Hale looked directly into the camera. "I know. I'm here to serve you legal documents." I told him to leave the envelope in the mailbox. A few minutes later, I drove back after the reporters disappeared. The lawsuit was exactly what David expected. My parents claimed they had financially supported me for years and that I had promised to take care of the family if I ever became successful. None of it was true. There wasn't a single signed document, not one witness, just a long list of accusations. David barely spent 5 minutes reading it before smiling. "This case is weak." But don't celebrate yet. People don't always file lawsuits to win. Sometimes they file them to pressure you. Over the next month, things became even uglier. Someone created fake social media posts claiming I had abandoned my parents when they were sick. Another post claimed I had secretly promised Jason millions of dollars before changing my mind. Thousands of strangers believed every word. Fortunately, every lie left a trail. David hired a digital investigator. Within 2 weeks, they traced several anonymous accounts back to the same internet connection, Jason's apartment. When David showed me the report, I couldn't believe it. He actually did this? He did. And he wasn't careful. The court hearing finally arrived. For the first time in years, my entire family sat in the same room. No one looked at me. The judge listened patiently as Richard Hale argued that I had a moral obligation to share my winnings because my parents had raised me. When he finished, David stood. He didn't raise his voice. He simply presented evidence. Screenshots of Jason's threats. Bank records proving my parents had never supported me financially after I turned 19. Medical bills showing I had paid for my own surgery. Rental agreements. Employment records. And finally, the investigator's report connecting Jason to the fake online campaign. The courtroom became completely silent. The judge slowly closed the folder. Then he looked directly at my parents. "Winning the lottery does not create a legal obligation to distribute money to relatives." He paused. "Your claims are unsupported. The case is dismissed." My father lowered his head. My mother began to cry. Jason stood up so quickly that his chair nearly fell over. As everyone walked toward the exit, he stopped beside me. "You think you've won." I looked at him calmly. "I didn't come here to beat you. I came here to protect myself." He laughed bitterly. "You'll die alone with all that money." Maybe he was trying to hurt me. Maybe he actually believed it. Either way, I didn't answer. 6 months later, I sold my house and moved to another state. Very few people knew my new address. I invested most of the money instead of spending it. I quietly donated to children's hospitals, scholarship programs, and local food banks. No interviews, no cameras, no announcements. Just help where it was needed. Almost a year later, I received one final email. It was from Emma. She apologized again for telling our mother. She admitted she had believed the family would simply congratulate me. Instead, she watched everything fall apart. We met for coffee a few weeks later. Slowly, we rebuilt the trust we had lost. As for everyone else, I never heard from them again. People say money changes lives. They're right, but not because it buys happiness. Because the moment people think you have something they want, you discover who truly loves you, and who was only waiting for the opportunity to take it away.